Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has been taking a considerable amount of heat this week from DC insiders and politicians because she's still insisting that it is important that we primary corporate Democrats. And for obvious, self-interested reasons, they hate hearing her say this because now that she's part of the club, you'd think that she would want to close the door and lock it behind her. But she's still adamant about the need to have change in Washington, D.C., to elect grassroots progressives, to elect working class Americans. And in an interview with Chris Hayes on MSNBC, she explained her reasoning for still supporting campaigns like Brand New Congress and Justice Democrats. And I think that what she says here is not just perfectly reasonable, but it's fundamentally important.
You, Justice Democrats, Justice Dems, which is a group that had sort of worked with your campaign early on, you and they had sort of announced your plans to continue the process of primarying incumbent Democrats, which is how, of course, you got to Congress. I wonder, like, how does that color the relationships you have with the incumbents there?
Well, I think what's important to articulate what Justice Democrats is about is really, it's not their mission. Their mission isn't we're going to primary Democrats. Their mission is we're going to support working class candidates to run in midterm elections. And so they have supported and endorsed candidates in red to blues, in open primaries, but they do not shy away from actual primaries in blue races either. And so, you know, I'm not sure if it really changes much because incumbent Democrats support and endorse against other incumbents all the time. You had Dan Lipinski earlier this year.
That's what incumbency is.
That is,
that's being part of the club.
And so, but you have people that also support other primary challengers to incumbents as well. Like, again, you had Dan Lipinski this year, where you have Kirsten Gillibrand, you have Pramila Jayapal, that came in and said, we need change in this community. So I don't think it's anything too out of I don't think it's a departure from precedent at all. But I also think that we need to realize that, at least for me and what I tell my community, is that once we get elected to Congress, we don't own these seats. We rent them from our communities. And we have to make our case every single time. And that's not convenient. I'm saying this to you as an incumbent to be.
Yeah.
And I realize that means I hold myself to that standard as well, but I think it makes our democracy healthy.
I really am thankful to see this new wave of progressive politicians arrive in Congress because they're giving me something that I haven't felt in a really long time. They're giving me hope because she is proving that she's the real deal. She's staying true to her principles and her values. Because Chris Hayes, you know, he implied in asking her the question, how do you think this is going to impact your relationship with other Democratic Party lawmakers? You know, implied that would be something that impacts her relationship and might affect her ability to affect change within Congress, and she just didn't seem too worried about it. And she shouldn't be worried about it because even if it does impact her ability to affect change within Congress, it's still the right thing to do. And if we don't challenge corporate Democrats, then we will not get the change that we need desperately because they've already shown to us time and again that they're not willing to fight. So this level of boldness is exactly what we need. You have to take chances. You have to put yourself out there and maybe even make yourself vulnerable in a number of ways in order to usher in a new era of politics in Washington, D.C., and she's the start of that. Now, Ro Khanna is also demonstrating that he's bold as well. He's the type of leader that we need in Congress because you'll all recall he endorsed Joe Crowley, and it wasn't a sweeping endorsement or anything of that nature, but he endorsed Joe Crowley, and there were a lot of progressives that spoke out and criticized him. I criticized him, but he came on my show, and he actually listened to us, and he said that he made a mistake, and he decided to then dual endorse Ocasio-Cortez and Joe Crowley, and there were reports that when he went back to the House, the very next day he was chewed out on the House floor by Joe Crowley for choosing to be bold, but he did it anyway, even knowing that that would be the consequence. And that's exactly what we need. We need this type of bold leadership from progressives, because this is what's going to actually get us the change. If you truly want Medicare for all, tuition-free public colleges and universities, part of that is making sure we do everything in our power to push the party in Congress currently to the left, but at the same time, we're gonna have to primary corporate Democrats who are refusing to budge. And we need people in Congress to understand how important that is. And we finally have people in Congress that get it. Now, I want to share a quote from Ocasio-Cortez because what she said here was just, it was poetic. She states, once we get elected to Congress, we don't own these seats. We rent them from our communities, and we have to make our case every single time. Now, I can't tell you how important this is because oftentimes somebody will feel as if they actually are progressive, but then when they get elected and they serve for decades and decades, well, over time, they tend to get out of touch. They stop visiting the community that put them in office, and they become this powerful incumbent that just clings to power, and it's no longer about representing the community. And what she's saying here is that you need the consent to govern by your community. So if you're going to continue representing that community, then you've got to prove to them that you're still willing to represent them. And that's the truth. They need to prove to us that they deserve to be there. So I was really happy to see her say this on the mainstream media because prior to 2016, before Bernie Sanders decided to run, this type of unorthodox views about American politics and specifically Democratic Party intra-politics would have never been spoken about. Nobody would have said something like this. But now that we have people like Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders saying it, I hope that this will slowly but surely get the ball rolling because we need change. And we need change pretty quickly. But, I think that we're off to a pretty good start. And it's because of people like Bernie Sanders. It's because of people like Ocasio-Cortez, Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, Ayanna Pressley, Ilhan Omar, people like that who are willing to be bold. And I'm incredibly thankful for them.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.